Hi, this is Felicia Clark. This week, week 5, we will be doing social influence number 2 with conformity, compliance, obedience, and group process. Chapter 7, Chapter 8. Exploring social, part of the articles is Exploring Social Identity Theory, the Black Sheep Effect Among College Student Athletes by Harley and Harmon Hosch, David Bouvier. The Myth of Conformity, Adolescence and Abstinence from Unhealthy Drinking Behaviors, Carter Reese and Danielle Wallace. Social influence is the change in behavior that one person causes in another, intentionally or unintentionally. As a result, the person changes and perceives themselves in relationship to the influencer or other people in society in general. Three areas of social influence are conformity, compliance, and obedience. Social influence can be automatic. Social influence has an impact on people. Conformity is the tendency to change our perceptions, opinions, or behaviors in ways that are consistent with group norms. We conform to things every day, for example, eating with utensils and driving on the right side of the road. Just following rules is a form of conformity. Major influence larger groups are more likely to conform to similar behaviors and thoughts than smaller ones. Ash did a study in 1956 that confirms this, and that same study still holds true today. Minority influence is the degree to which a smaller fraction within the group maintaining a different position on an issue influences the group during decision making. The influence is informational. Smaller groups tend to have a harder time finding support for their unpopular views and opinions. People follow implicit and explicit group norms. Part of the behavior is intended to match that of the majority. Compliance. Compliance is changes in behavior that are elicited by direct requests. Behavior influenced by peers. People comply when they feel indebted to their requesters. The tendency of confirming with it or agreeing to the wishes of others. There are several techniques used to gain compliance, including the front in the door technique, the door in the face technique, lowballing, and that's not all technique. In the front foot in the door technique, you begin with a very small request, you secure your agreement, and then you make a separate, larger request. In lowballing, you secure your agreement with a request, and then you increase the size of that request by revealing hidden costs. From large to small in your request, you have the door in the face. The door in the face begins with a very large request that will be rejected. Then follow that up with the more modest request. That's not all. It begins with somewhat inflated request, then immediately decreases the apparent size of that request by offering a discount or a bonus. Obedience. Obedience is the behavior change produced by commands of authority, a form of social influence in which a person yields to explicit instructions or orders from an authority figure. Obedience behavior influenced by authority figures and behavior influenced by peers. In Milgram's experience on obedience, 65% of the participants administered a 450-volt shock to an unresponsive participant due to the fact out of obedience to the experimenter, even though most of the participants felt hesitant to do so. Higher levels of perceived prestige and closer proximity to the authority figure are associated with increased obedience. De-individuation and lack of expertise is participants were also associated with higher levels of obedience. Group processes. Groups is a set of individuals who interact over time and have shared fate, goals, or identity. A group consists of people who have joint membership in a social category based on sex, race, or other attributes. Key features of groups, roles, norms, and cohesiveness. Roles can be formal or informal. Norms are rules of conduct for members. Cohesiveness is related to the group performance due to causal direction. It may go any kind of way. Cultural differences is important for group cohesive. Social facilitation is, according to Zink, the presence of others increase arousal, which strengthens the dominant response to a stimulus. On an easy task, the dominant response is usually correct. Thus, the presence of others enhances the performance. On a hard task, the dominant response is usually incorrect. Thus, the presence of others it impairs performance. Part of the articles that I read, The Myth of Conformity, Adolescence, and Abstinence from Unhealthy Drinking Behaviors by Carter Rees and Danielle Wallace. This article was mainly about adolescent peers groups who were drinking and the norms as well established source of influence for alcohol initiation and use. Using the classical experimental studies of social influence, namely minority influence in social situations to which an individual can resist conforming to the group norm. The evidence showed that being a non drinking adolescent does not put youth at risk for drinking when faced with the friendship network where most of the friends drink. The results showed that a non drinking adolescent with many drinking friends is less likely to initiate alcohol abuse if he or she has a minority of non drinking friends. A drinking adolescent with most friends who drink has a decreased probability of continuing to drink and has overall lower levels of consumption if he or she has a minority of friends who do not drink. And lastly, the article found that adolescents in group friendships of a mix of behavior profiles and can perhaps help adolescents continue to begin to abstain from alcohol use even when a friendship group supportive of alcohol use. The second article was about exploring social identity theory and the black sheep effect among college student athletes and non-athletes by Leslie Harley, Harmon Hosch, and James Bouviard. This article was set to explore if student athletes and non-athletes would demonstrate in-group favoritism and out-group bias. It also examined whether student athletes' in group favoritism could be reversed to create a black sheep effect. Using the experimental mixed design with athletes and non athletes, and also athletes' characteristics with non athletic characteristics in a combination of aggressive for high aggressiveness and low aggressiveness and high athletic and low athletic and manipulating them and throwing them in them and putting them all together. Basically what it did was it had the athletes and it mixed them all together, and then characteristics weren't exactly the same, and it wasn't actually the person or the student's actual characteristics. It was just some that they had mixed up and put them together and just basically put them out. In terms of an outgroup bias, separate main effects in participant athletic status and main characters um, indicated that the higher punishment and higher negative reflections at the university were used against student athletes compared to non athletic students. there were limited support for the black sheep effect because the athletic participants assigned more negative ratings than the non-athletic um, participants. The results shed light on how student athletic statuses and contents related to judgments of deviant student athletes because they felt that the athletes should be held to a higher standard than the other non-athletics because they were in the eye of the public. False, unfounded, and unrealistic expectations by non-athletic students were potential to manufacture the divisions of the two, and the university was held responsible, and they had to change some of the policies and the ways that they were looking at things in order to make the students more comfortable with the way that they were doing things. The policies and the procedures had to be changed for the faculty and the students in order for them to reduce those perceptions that they had of the students and the athletes, as well as the non-athletic students. My two questions that I have posed were in Chapter 7, conformity, compliance, and obedience were discussed. Which of the three forms of social influences have you found yourself using in your life? And using these forms of social influences, have you found it beneficial or hindering to you? And can you share an example? And my second question is that in the Bible, Ecclesiastes 4:9 states that two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. To me, this means that by working together as a team in cohesiveness, a team makes better strides at getting the job done, which they can do it better and complete. Can you relate to being cohesive on the job, at work, or any time in your life that made something better? This completes my presentation for the week, and thank you.